So we're going to have a go at doing the packaging design that we did in Photoshop the other day in terms of how to create a template and bring it into Photoshop and add graphics to it. I'm going to try and do it fairly quickly. First of all, I'm going to go to Photoshop and I'm going to set up a new page, and I'm going to work in A3. So that's International Paper A3. 300 dots per inch is a good size because it's a high quality. Open that up. I'm going to rotate the image 90 degrees clockwise, like so, and then I'm going to save the image as a Photoshop file. I'm going to call that packaging. Save that to the desktop, so if anything goes wrong I have the file. Go to the image. Now I took a photograph of this with my camera, and we're going to have a go at doing this packaging here. So you can drag this into Photoshop into the bar up here, which will open it up. And let's say, for example, I want this distance between this point and this point to be 6 centimeters, which is what I've designed. So I'm going to come across to here and I'm going to use these rulers. You can find the rulers in View and Rulers, or Hash or Control and R will bring them up. And I can set these guides at certain distances. If I hold down spacebar, I get the hand and I can move the page around. And if I want to set the preferences in terms of size, I can go to Units and Rulers and you can change it to centimeters here. Okay, so I'm going to bring this into 5, this guide, and I'm going to bring this in to 11, which is a distance of say 6 centimeters, and I'm going to drag this into this image here. Now you can see at the moment, if I zoom out, if I use the magnifier and zoom out, that this is a little bit too small. That's fine. So what I can do is I can just line up the edge of the card here, line it up just on here so I can see this is the edge. This is where the other guide is. That's 6 centimeters across there. And what I can do is I can go Edit, Transform, Free Transform, and I can hold down Shift and I can scale up the size of this. Like that, until I get it kind of where I want. Hold down Shift and I'm going to scale it in. So now if I look at this, this is kind of the distance between here and here is around 6 centimeters. So now I can hit OK. And what I'm going to do is zoom out again. Come back to this image, and then you can do Free Transform or Control and T. Hold down Shift, then we can turn that around like this. So that's now the size that I want on my page. I know when I print this out, this will be 6 centimeters across here, this will be 6 centimeters across here. View, I can show my guides, I can hide the guides. So I can clear them if I don't need these ones anymore. And I'm going to drag a guide in just here on the edge, and I'm going to start to add the guides to this template like we did the other day. Now this template needs to move around a little bit because it's not quite straight, so I'm going to just correct that and bring that horizontal and bring down a horizontal line there. So I just need to correct it a little bit more. A scan is always better than a photograph because a photograph will warp slightly. So I'm just going to be very general here and bring in lots of guides which kind of find the boundaries of this template. Like that. So what we've got now is some grid references. We can put a couple more in here if we wanted, where the packaging will fold if we really want. It's not particularly necessary. So we've got a general guide here around this, and I'm going to File and I'm going to Save. Turn OK. There's a couple of ways now that we're going to create the layer for this, which we're going to be able to trace around to create the shape. I'll put these ones in as well. Like that. File, Save. So now we've got the grid reference set up on the packaging, and I can call this one Original Template, like that. A couple of ways we can do this. We can use the marquee tool here the polygonal lasso tool, and we can click on that, and we can actually work our way around creating a dotted line around the packaging where we want. Okay. The other way of doing it is that we can use a path. So if we're going to, I'm just going to lighten this up a little bit. Image, adjustments and levels, and just pull the brightness of this up a little bit because it's a little bit hard to see. Try and adjust that slightly so I can see the lines. You can use something called paths, and paths are in here. So you can use a pen tool. A pen tool will do the same thing. You can put points between other points on the work. So I can drag lines around the object like this, you see. But where it's really handy is where, if you want to do curves, if you put a dot down, you can actually bend the line like this. And you can use the mouse to kind of bend it. So if you've got a packaging that has a bendy line, you can kind of do that. And you can connect the line back up again. You can use the arrow key down here to kind of work with the path that you've created. And if you right click on the path, you can make it a selection, which means you can then work with it like you would do if you were going to do with the polygonal lasso tool. So you can use the pen tool, and if you come back in here, if we go back to it being a path, and you click with the white free selection tool, you can actually readjust some of these curves like so. So if the curves weren't quite correct when you were originally doing them, you can click on the path, which is quite tricky sometimes, and you can edit. You can use these controls for how big you want the curve to be and move them around until you get them right, and then when you get them right, you can go back to the path selection tool and make it a selection and work away with it like you would do with the polygonal. But in this case, we're going to use a polygonal tool. I'm going to click here. Now this will always lock to the guides as long as you have snap turned on. I'm going to work my way around this template. Hold down spacebar to move it. And when you come to closing the line, the little circle will appear like that. And now what we've got is a little dotted line, like a little line of ants, chasing the selection that we've created. So we go to New Layer, and we go to the Paint Bucket tool, which is here. And for now, I'm just going to choose a colour. So I'm just going to choose a light colour for now. And I'm going to make sure I'm on the layer, New Layer, and I'm going to click within that dotted line like this. And that's now filled in a space on that page within that dotted line. So I'm going to double click this, and I'm going to call that New Template, like so. And I can press Control and deselect, or Image, select and deselect if you want to get rid of that dotted line. I can back off. Now if I turn off the original template image, what we see now is the one that we've created in Photoshop, which is our template, which we're trying to make for the packaging, like this. Okay. And what I can do is I'm only ever going to want to work on this. I'm not going to actually want to work outside that. So I'm going to lock it in terms of location, so now it can't move. And then I'm going to click on lock transparency, which means if I get a brush and try to draw on it, I can draw on it, but I can't draw off it. So it keeps it on. Okay. So now we've locked the transparency, we've locked the movement. So we've got this shape layer on here. And now what I'm going to do is to create a layer for the outside, which will be a mask. So if I come to this image here and hold down the Option key or the Alt key or the Command key on Mac, so it might be the cursor key on PC, that will give me that selection line back that we had before. It makes a selection from the layer that we've already got on the top, like that. And what I can do is create a new layer on top, and I'm going to call this mask, and of course upper mask. And make sure the layer is selected. I'm going to choose a different colour just to help me separate it. Paint bucket tool and click within it. And if it doesn't work, it's because we need to select on the opposite side to these dotted lines here. So what we can do is we go to select inverse, which will now select the opposite side, and we can click the paint bucket tool and it will fill the layer. And you can see there's a gap here on this layer here where we've got the gap in the middle. The other way of doing it, of course, if we deselect, is that we just colour the entire upper layer with a colour, come back down to the layer below, select that, come back to that layer and go Control X and just cut that piece out. Okay, so now I'm going to lock the top layer, and I'm going to make this lock transparency and make a new colour. I'm going to choose a very light grey, very light grey, and I'm going to use a paint bucket tool and just paint that in, that light colour. I'm going to come back to the new template and I'm going to choose a white, and I'm going to fill that in white. So there we go. So now we've got the page set up how we want. We've got the upper mask, we've got the card template down below here. Now we're pretty much ready to go and create our packaging. So we can save this, like this. Now we know from the original template that we're only really wanting to work, if we bring this template up to the top, we only really need to work within this area in here. Okay, so we're not really looking to complete these tabs so much. So what we can do is create a new shape in here and a new shape in here that we can put graphics on within that part of the packaging. So the way that we do that is we still use the selection tool. This one's a little bit more complicated than what we did the other day. And we can use those guides with the snap tool to lock. Like that. And that's one layer selected. We can come down here and I can hold down Shift. If you hold down Alt, you can take away from a selection. If you hold down Shift, you can add to it. I'm going to add a bit more of a selection to the other one. So now, if we have a look, we've got two layers selected here. I can do new layer, I'm going to call this main front. So this will be the main image that people will see. And what I can do is choose a new colour again, just to differentiate it slightly. And then I can fill that in there and there. Again, I want to lock that to move it, lock transparency. So effectively now we've got our packaging front and back, and then we've got the bits down the side. Now the only thing we have really left to do maybe is think about a colour that we might want to use. So if this packaging was going to be an overall colour, what I might want to do is we can use this shape we've created to cut away, but I might say I want this colour to be maybe like a light blue, if that's what looks nice for my packaging. So I'm going to choose a light blue, and I'm going to select new template and just colour that in like a light blue. Something like that. And then I might do the same for the main front. And we can still use that as a selection layer if we want to cut an image away. And now what I'm going to do is go back to my sort of selections here. So if we have a look, there's a number of images that we can use. So maybe I'm going to take something which is quite nice. Now if it's a PNG, if I open this in Photoshop, the PNG has the line cut out of it already, whereas if we come back to a JPEG, we have to technically cut the JPEG out because it still has the white in the background. Now it's quite easy to do with that. So click the background, click OK, use a magic wand, and magic wand will select everything which is white, okay, to get rid of it. Now the problem with the magic wand is you can change the tolerance here, and what the magic wand's doing is the larger the number is set. If I set 100 in here and use the magic wand, it will select everything it creeps into that looks kind of white. So already it's breaking into the image here. If I set this down to a 10, for example, it will trace the edge more, but it won't pick up these greys. So you can hold down Shift and keep adding in selections like this to get rid of these bits. Or what we can do is find a better image that doesn't have so much grey around the edge. So if we take a JPEG like this one, no, that's not a JPEG, maybe this one. What we can do is we can use a freeform selection tool, and that will just chase all of that as that white line. Click OK, and then it cuts it out. And Control X will cut it out. So we can take this leaf, and I'm going to put this leaf into here. I'm going to bring this on, and I'm going to think about the packaging. Maybe I need to turn this whole page around. So I'm going to rotate the canvas. So that will bring the packaging this way around now. So this is how it might be front on, and I'm thinking that this leaf might fit here. If I bring that on to have a look at where the boundary is, that looks about okay. So we turn this off. So leaf's going to fit there, and then I might maybe take some more mint leaves and bring these on here. Bring them layers to the top. Free transform. These are PNGs, so I didn't have to worry about these too much. And what I might do is take this front and just make that slightly grey so I can just see the border of it. Just so I know where I'm working. We can change the colour back in a minute. So I'm going to have a leaf there, and I can copy that across by holding Alt, and I can copy them. If I want to copy them another way, I drag the copy here and it makes another copy. Always layer and title. So that's leaf left, leaf right, leaf right 2, that's good. So I'm going to move that around. I can use Control and T and kind of change the way that looks, which is quite interesting. Now what I could do is actually pattern the edges of these tabs here. So if I take this and I copy this across again and change this around, what we can actually do is use that as a pattern. Keep turning that a little bit. Something like this. I'm doing this quite quickly, so it probably won't look perfect. So if I click Auto Select, it will automatically select whatever layer I touch on. If I turn this off, it won't. So I'm going to do this and Auto Select and move these things around. And now what I want to do is I want to keep them just on the tab side of things. So I'm going to come back to my layers, and these are all the leaves that I've got on the right starting here, all the way up to the top here. So I can select all of those like this, and I can go to Layer, Merge Layers. And if I've selected all of them, that will make all of these layers one layer. like this. Now what I can do is actually cut away the inside of those leaves. So I can click on, for example, this layer here, make a selection by holding down Command or Alt, and come back to this top leaf layer and go Control and X and cut away the inside. Then what I can do is come back to the upper mask, click on that, do the same thing, come back to the leaves, Control X and cut them away there. So now what I have is the pattern of the leaves on the tabs of the edge of the packaging. I can save the work, come back over here, come back to working on this leaf, that's quite nice. I'm going to come back to the packaging here, I'm going to pick something maybe like the aloe vera. So open with Photoshop. Now this one's a JPEG, so I'm going to have to use the magic wand, change the tolerance to around 40 to try and remove some of this white. If I hold down Shift, I can select multiple areas of the white, like this. Make sure the layer is unlocked. Control X will delete that. And I'm going to drag that into here. Now that's enormous, so Control and T. I can then resize that with the Shift. And I can bring that and maybe put that somewhere into there, like that. Click OK. And then I can change where this is, so I put aloe here, and this leaf left, I'm going to put this on top. So now that leaf is sitting on top of this. Now what I want to do, I want to do the same thing, I want to cut all this away. So I'm going to combine the leaf left and aloe layer, merge. I'm going to merge those two layers together like this, and I'm going to use the cutting from the inside of this to cut away the rest of this image. So Command, see the dotted line that we have? Here. And I'm not going to cut the inside of it, I want to cut the outside of it. So I go to Select, Inverse, Control and X, and we'll try that again. For some reason that didn't work. Select Inverse, come back to the layer that I want to take away from, Control and X, and that will then cut away that background part there. Okay. I can always drop the opacity of this to make it a little bit more faded out, which we might work on in a minute. So we've got a grey background, and we've got a bit of grey in there for a colour. We've got the leaf on the front here, we've got this leaf around the outside. I'm going to save this in case something goes wrong, like this. And now in terms of the rest of it, I might maybe want to put some graphics down this middle part here and add some text in here. So I'm going to come back to these. I'm going to pick a texture. I'm going to pick this texture here. Open this with Photoshop. And I'm going to close down everything else that I don't want, so it doesn't confuse Photoshop. I'll leave that one there. I'm going to drag this in. Here. I'm going to close this down. And I'm thinking I might use some of this texture to maybe suit the patterns on the left here. So I'm going to make that slightly larger, like this. Okay. I'm going to come back to my layers, and I need to use something to cut away from this. So the mask layer gives me this dotted line cut. I'm going to come back to this image here and go Control X and cut that away like this. Then I'm going to come back to the main front, this one here, and again cut that away, and then we have a pattern here. And then in terms of this part here, I can just use the selection tool and just cut that bit away. Now what I can do is change the opacity of that to bring the colour, fade the colour out a little bit so it's not as strong. And what I might do now is change the colour of the main front and make that white, like this. And what I might do is also bring down the opacity of these leaves here. So we've got leaves left, so I'm going to drop the colour down a little bit, try and fade them out. Just fade them down a little bit, and then we've got the leaves on the right, which I'm going to drop the opacity down as well and just fade them out too. And we've got the actual template itself, so we're going to make sure that's white as well. Okay. So when we zoom out, we've got our packaging set up like that. Got the leaf on here, patterns around the edge, patterns of leaves around here, and then what we might do is kind of like decorate that with some other things we want to put on. So let's say I want to put on some leaves. Okay. Now because we've got the upper mask, we can drag that right back to the top, so that covers everything. Now I haven't labelled things here, so it's getting tricky knowing where things are. I can use this mask that I've put on the top to kind of hide where everything else is. Turn that around. Put that there, like that. And what I might want to do now is put a bit of text on. So I'm going to get the text, drag a text box, change the colour of the text by going here. So it's going to be black. And the size of the text is 10 at the moment. So I'm going to make that maybe 14. And I'll just do a test. Okay. I'm going to type aloe. Now if you can't see it, it's because it's underneath something else. So if we bring that above the main front, we should spot it. So I'm going to make that a little bit bigger. Okay. Now if I want to change the typeface, I can double click on there and click on there and just rotate through until I find one I like. Always try and keep the same typefaces. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. I'm going to change that down to maybe 18, and then I might change the colour to say green, and I'm going to change the wording to hydrate, for example, aloe hydrate, like that. Of course, it's always much easier to work if you zoom in. So you've got aloe hydrate, and again I might want to come back to here and find something which is healthy, something that signifies moisture, so maybe fruit. So we could right click, open with Photoshop, and I might drag these strawberries into here, for example. Okay, and again they're a little bit big, that's fine. I can change the size of that, move that around to where I think it might fit nice on the page. Hit that. Now because we need to use a cut layer again to cut that away, so we've got our main front as we had before, so I can use it as a selection. Select inverse to cut outside the dotted line, go back to the strawberry layer and cut that away. Okay. Now I can come back to my text and I can hold down shift, we'll select two layers at once, and I can use the pointer tool on my keyboard to move things around, and I might put that in the center like that. Now in terms of things, save that, in terms of things like barcodes, for example, you can put your barcode in to make it look a little bit more realistic. So open with Photoshop again, and how you do this is really depending on your packaging, so your design is obviously yours. So this has just been made up very, very quickly. And that might just fit on one of those parts there. And of course there's going to be a section on this where you would put all of your ingredients as such. So like we did the other day, you might have a part of here where you put lots of text. So when you're doing base text, you can use lorem ipsum, like we've shown you before. Lorem ipsum. So you go to the generator of lorem ipsum, like this. And we can just grab a little bit of this text, copy that, and then come back to here. Think about where we're going to put a bit of text. We'll put it in here. Change the size, make it small to begin with. Paste. That didn't work, so I'm going to make it smaller. Maybe 6. Now, if the text has come through too big like this and you need to change it and it doesn't look right, you can go to Window, you can go to Character, and in here you can change everything, such as the point size, the spacing between the text. So here I'm going to drop down the spacing between the text down to 8, and the point size is 6. And I can change in paragraph how it sits within that. I think so. For me, at the minute, that's kind of okay. I might do for now, but I might also just change this colour to black, for example, and bring the box in slightly smaller so it fits nicely. And this might be where I put my ingredients, for example. Okay, so now we can mess around with that. We can copy that over. So we come back to here and we can grab that and copy it. Use the pointer tool to move it again. We might put some text on there, but of course this is the other side of the box, so it will be the other way round. And if this text is above the leaf on the layer, then you'll see it. Okay, so I might even actually hold down Alt and copy that over again. Put some more text on there to see how that looks like. It kind of looks okay. Like this. Might take a bit more text. We'll take that. Copy that again. Turn that off so I can move it. It's not too clear, so I'm going to zoom in a little bit like this. Maybe what we'll do, we'll use this text for here. So we might put 50 milliliters fluid ounces, for example, and we'll make that white, and we'll make it large. What we can do is we can rotate that slightly. We can just move that in here, like this. So what I now need to do is copy over the aloe hydrate. Aloe, here, and we've got the hydrate. And I can make those, I can drag those across. At the minute, they're behind. So I need to drag those and move those up to the top. We'll zoom in a little bit. And the hydrate now isn't particularly clear. So I might need to come in there again and change that to a white. Like that. And maybe put hydrate in the middle and bring aloe down. Okay. Now as a test, I can now print that out and see what it looks like. So if I close that down, Control and S for save. Now I can print that out as a test and see what it is and see how it comes out. There's a couple of things you can do now in terms of turning that into a template that you can actually print and work with. You could just print it all with the grey around the outside. Another way is to go to your upper mask layer, double click on it and put a stroke. And if you click on stroke and go to position, I can try outside and see how that looks. What that will do is you go change from inside to outside, it will change where the line is. So you can do layer on the outside like that, and that will put a black line around the edge of everything on the edge of that mask, which will give you something to cut to. So I've put a 4, we could try a 3. So now if I zoom in here, you can see where there's this black line that's around the edge of the mask, which means when you print this out you'll have a cut line. And what you can also do now is you can then change the colour of the upper mask to white. And if we were to hide the guides, view, you've got show guides, just hide them for now, we don't have to turn them off. And we save. Okay, effectively what we've got here is something we can print from, like this. So this can be your template. If you do Command and F, or just hold down F, you'll get full screen. So you can actually see how this is starting to look. So this looks quite good to me. This looks okay. Okay, so bring all this back. Now if you want to print it, there's a couple of ways you can do it. You can go File, Save As, and it will save it as it is without you destroying the layers. If you save JPEG, go to Desktop, and click 12 maximum. That should save that as a flattened image. If we come down here and have a look on here, open up the JPEG, there it is. So you can now print from that, send that to print. That should print out at the size that we wanted. This is an A3 page, and because we set the guide up originally to be 60 mil across here, that should print at 60 mil across there. The quality is fairly good in the JPEG, as long as the image was originally 300 dots per inch. That's good. What you can also do is you can save this as a PDF, File, Save As, and then you can change that to a PDF, which can be slightly better quality. So Photoshop PDF, again, save it as a packaging on the desktop, click OK. I always turn off Preserve Editing to keep the size down, and if we double click on this, for some reason that's not saving. Try that again. Oh yeah, there we go. Took a little while. It took a little while because it's a larger file and slightly better quality. So if you come and zoom in now of the PDF, you can see how the text is much better. So saving as a PDF will always give you slightly better quality, especially when it comes to text. If you zoom in on the text here, if you notice, the text is quite pixelated because it's a JPEG. JPEG is pixels, whereas PDF is vectors. So really, in terms of printing, a PDF is best when you do your final print, but for speed you could use a JPEG to do your test prints on the work. And that's how I would do it. If I was completely finished with this file and didn't want to use it again, you can go to Layer and Flatten Image, and that will basically flatten all of that into one picture. But what I try to do is keep everything as separate layers so that I can continue to come back and work on this another time if I want to. And there you go. That's pretty much it. I think in terms of a 20-minute session in learning Photoshop, that's how I would set up my packaging designs. Alright, very good. Good luck.